Well, that last video is a spicy one. Controversial topic, Mr. Trump. But really, ultimately, it was about looking at that part of the American population and recognizing that there's a huge chunk that felt pushed aside, glossed over, not represented, and ignored, and put in a box that maybe they didn't deserve because they had different values, different opinions. Like I said, they weren't represented. And in some cases, they were avoided. Avoidance is a sickness, a very prevalent sickness these days. A lot of people come up with many excuses to avoid, whether you're avoiding the other side of the political spectrum and some of their values that you don't hold yourself, or their legitimate grievances, or you're avoiding some sort of conflict in a relationship or in a family, or you're avoiding some health issues, whether they're in yourself or not talking about these kinds of things when others are facing them. Avoidance is a deep problem. And, there's many subcultures that have some built-in excuses if you let them be an excuse for you to avoid things. If you're someone who values intellect and maybe chases merit, maybe you avoid having frank but compassionate conversations with people because you think they're below you, because you think they don't possess the intellect to understand the concepts that you might address. Or maybe you're someone that chases virtue and have a misguided sense of compassion, because true compassion requires courage in telling the truth, in addressing something, and trying to work out a conflict. It requires the possibility of being uncomfortable yourself and making others uncomfortable. And if you're just trying to be nice to everybody, not ruffle any feathers, or disrupt their nervous system or trigger their trauma, we don't want to do these things on purpose, maliciously. It's not something to enjoy as an act of power. That's gross. But it's something that can be a byproduct of going through difficult territory on difficult topics. Maybe you're in the spiritual community and you don't want to be around low vibes, so you don't want to create them yourself. You don't want to move through darkness because you strive to live in the love and the light. Well, that's avoidant, because sometimes you must go through dark places. Sometimes you must enter your shadow and the shadow of others in order to find the light, ultimately. Sometimes you must go down to go up, right? There are some journeys to growth, to solutions, to conflict, to triumph over adversity that must first go through the underworld to be able to get to the other side. And sometimes those are both the toughest and the most fruitful journeys. And if you allow avoidance to poison you, you're going to avoid them. You're not going to go on those journeys. You're going to come up with a million excuses. You're going to want to stay away from those low vibrations. I enjoy videos by a woman who studies esotericism and alchemy and has maybe the sexiest eyebrows on YouTube. No cap. In any case, she was talking about integrating low vibrations to be able to embody high vibrations, to be high vibrational. It's not avoidance. You must accept it. Just like if you have true integration of your emotions, then you're capable of being angry sometimes. You're capable of being truly sad sometimes and expressing that. You're capable of being around people that are going through that without losing your stability, and helping maybe be that form of grounding, to be that patient ear and open heart, even though someone's going through something that's very extreme, some sort of emotion, or being around people that are vibrating at a low frequency. If you truly are living in a high frequency state, sometimes, if you care about someone, whether that's someone that you know or your heart reaches out to someone that's a stranger, sometimes to help, to be there for someone else, it requires courage, and it requires that kind of integration of the low vibration. So you can be there, you can be with it, and you can bring your high vibrational state without collapsing, without getting triggered, and bring that to a low vibrational situation. You can help it, raise the vibration by being there with it. That's integration. So there's a lot of avoidance, a lot of excuses in the spiritual communities as to why maybe a person shouldn't address certain things, be around certain kinds of people or certain environments. Again, don't spend all your time in these places that feel weighty and drag you down and you might see as low vibrational, but you should be capable of going there if there's a good reason, capable of speaking about what might seem like low vibrational things if there's a good reason, if it's to help a situation or a person. I was watching this jungle hippie, I say it with a lot of affection. He's some guy who films most of his videos in a jungle, speaks about spiritual matters. He has a few YouTube channels I think he started in the last few years. He's kind of a mix between Lebowski, Chong, and your favorite guru. And I don't think he takes a title, even of teacher exactly, but you know, he is in function, in practice, a kind of spiritual teacher. And he was talking about the difference between, say, India and a lot of like Western cultures and countries, and the relationship to death, right? I mean, the subject of death is one of the things that drives us to do all sorts of things. It's one of the primary drivers in life. Even procreation is beautiful and as opening and as much as many new possibilities as it provides. There's something about having a baby. It's about your immortality. It's about continuing the race. It's about continuing your line. It's a way to live on past death. That's an aspect of birth. There's sides of a coin, life and death, birth and death. We focus on youth in this culture. We focus on the new shiny possibilities, on the upward trajectories, the happy stories, and like to package things with happy endings. And sometimes things don't have happy endings. They're tough, they're crushing, they're horrible, horrible. But if we go through them, we can learn lessons from them. It might not be happy. There may be grief to integrate. There may be trauma to face and release and become stronger from. But death is a central part of life. Some might say it's why we're here. And this jungle hippie was talking about India and how when someone's dying, people talk about it. They gather around a person. As death approaches, whether that's hours or days or even months, it's integrated into the culture. Death is respected. But in the West, as I've observed with my difficult but ultimately fruitful closeness with death, and this jungle hippie commented, you could have someone with stage 4 cancer and they're getting close. They're barely eating, they're sleeping most of the time. And there's many families that might not even be there, might not even visit regularly, might not even be getting together to try to talk about, not what we're going to do, with the estate or getting the will together, though those practical details are very important, but their spirit. And even if spirit is not something that's important to the person that's passing or the family, the person themselves, their experience, they're coming to the end of their journey. And many families will just avoid because it's too difficult, because they haven't developed the courage that's necessary for true compassion, because it's culturally ingrained, because social media reinforces this happy, shiny candy coating over everything. Otherwise, if it tastes too bitter, if it has a flavor that's too extreme or sour, without that sweetness, you're not going to get the likes, you're not going to get the views. So in the West, many families will not gather around a person, will not prepare, will not speak to the person about death as death is approaching, will not maybe get some sort of representative to help that has experience with the release of spirit, with that last breath. And so in the West, we avoid, and it's sick. I had this suggestion with my mother, who had Alzheimer's. She wasn't quite close to death. It was, maybe 4 years before she passed away from the Alzheimer's or complications from the Alzheimer's. But this person who was a representative that helped people that were aging get the resources that they needed to live their life or transition into a care facility. She was a wonderful woman. She helped us so much, and she had a lot of experience, I'm sure. But she suggested that we just take my mom to the facility for lunch, go into the main meeting room with the family, and then just get up and excuse ourselves slowly and leave her there. And let her forgetfulness and placations maybe from the staff take care of that difficult part of true compassion that requires courage, that requires you to be in a difficult state, to face difficult truth. Now, there was a flood at the point of transition that supercharged and sped everything up. So I told her the truth, that there was a flood and that she had to stay, and say it was a hotel and then a condo that the insurance company got us. And then we transitioned her, and it should have been 3 years, but it ended up being about 3 months. We transitioned her into the long-term care facility. And I could tell her the truth, that it was the flood. But as time went on and she asked periodically, where was that place with the water and the place that I used to be, and I knew what she was talking about. She was talking about the home that she had lived in for many, many years and cared for, and I told her, you're sick, Mom. We couldn't care for you there. There was a flood and we had to move you here, but you're not going to be going back there other than maybe visiting sometimes, because this is a safer place for you. This is where people will take care of you. This is your new home. And I had to tell her a number of times. Now, she didn't freak out. But ultimately, I wouldn't have been able to lie to her. If that disaster, the flood, didn't happen, I would have told her the truth, because she was a person with the most integrity that I had met. And inspired me to tell the truth and to be a person with integrity. So I would have told her. We would have brought her there. And even if everyone had to leave, I would have stayed to try to help her, to calm her. And eventually I would have left and come back to visit her and told her again. So it's worth telling the truth. It's worth not avoiding, I've got this recognition around the city that I don't understand. I don't know if people think I've made a mistake and I'm being dishonest or forgotten something, or if it's to do with the malicious narcissistic gossip that caused the crappy tenant to not pay rent for about a year from these neighbors around here that have watched me go through tough times in my life and have not been very helpful and have ultimately just spread probably exaggerations and falsehoods around the neighborhood. I don't know if that's gotten out into the larger world, into the social media sphere or the online sphere, and that's why people recognize me. But man, I've spoken to a number of people about this that should know me and I should be able to trust. And maybe none of them have any idea what it is, and just it's weird, they don't understand or think it's some misunderstanding on my part or some kind of paranoia or something like that. But it's very clear that there's recognition. I don't know the source. And I've had one person that had an ex that talked a bunch of shit about them, spread rumors, even kind of sent people to mess with her. One person that actually understood the experience and was receptive. And I trust her. She didn't have any information on it, but this is the kind of thing, you've got to face it. You've got to tell the truth, especially to people that you care about. Just because something seems obvious or something might seem embarrassing or traumatic, even if Alzheimer's, even if there's some mental health issue, don't avoid it. It's sick. That's when the elephant in the room dies and becomes putrid. And maybe people can smell it, but no one will clean it up and give it a proper burial. It's sick. Don't let avoidance poison you, poison your relationships, allow you to not build true compassion, which requires courage. Our world in the West is saturated with avoidance. The last 9-10 months, I've changed so many aspects of my life, and I'm able to live in a way that I haven't been able to live for over a decade. And I've got a lot more work to do. But my life has improved because I've worked hard. I've been very uncomfortable. But day on day, I've repeatedly got back to it and done what I had to through that discomfort. It felt low vibrational many times, but I'm much better for it. And ultimately, I'll be lighter for it. It will be easier to be high vibrational because of the work that I put in, because of the journey through darkness or shadow or difficulty or trauma that I've undertaken. You can undertake that too. You can move through avoidance with courageous compassion. And whether that's being with someone that's sick, or maybe getting close to death, or having that difficult conversation with someone that you're in some sort of relationship with, or facing yourself in the mirror and recognizing something needs to change. You can move through avoidance. If I can do it, so can you. I have faith that you can do it too.